My name is Rowan Elise Hart, 30 years old. I was an interior designer by profession, successful enough that clients booked me months in advance, but none of that ever filled the hollow space I'd carried around since childhood. It wasn't a dramatic wound, not the kind people talk about in therapy with a box of tissues beside them. It was quieter than that, something that accumulated slowly, year after year, moment after moment, until it became the background hum of my life. I grew up with parents who claimed they loved both their daughters equally, and a younger sister, Madison, who proved that wasn't true every single day. The favoritism wasn't subtle, it never had been. When I was 7 and brought home a second place ribbon from the school art contest, a ribbon I had spent hours earning, Mom said good job without looking up from whatever she was doing. Meanwhile, Madison had learned to tie her shoes that same day. Dad took pictures of her feet, Mom made her favorite dessert, and the dinner table turned into a celebration of shoelaces. My ribbon disappeared into a junk drawer before the end of the week. No one even remembered it. When I was 10, I made the honor roll. The certificate was crisp, bright, perfect. Madison brought home a participation trophy from soccer. She hated soccer. She barely touched the ball all season. But Dad mounted her trophy on the mantel like it was something sacred, while my report card was pinned to the fridge for exactly 2 days before it was buried under one of Madison's finger paintings. Every year after that followed the same pattern. Birthdays, Christmas, school milestones. I learned to stop expecting fairness, because expecting it only meant I'd get hurt again. If I said anything, I was being selfish. If I stayed quiet, I disappeared. By 12, I stopped trying to compete. Instead, I found the one place in the world where no one compared me to my sister, our old garage. It smelled like cedar and engine oil, a comforting blend of things that didn't need me to shrink to make someone else shine. I would sit on the concrete floor for hours, sanding pieces of wood until my fingers stung. That room became my refuge, my sanctuary, my first workshop long before I ever knew what design meant. One summer, I decided to build something real. A table. I didn't have a plan, didn't have the right tools, didn't have anyone helping me. The legs came out uneven, the surface wasn't smooth, and the screws didn't line up. But when I stood up and saw that wobbling, imperfect thing standing on its own, something inside me shifted. It was the first thing in my life no one could take credit for. Not Mom, not Dad, not Madison. Just me. That table followed me everywhere. When I left for college on a scholarship, I hauled it into my dorm room myself. My roommate thought it was a joke. I didn't bother explaining. I sanded it down again, painted the top, and used it as my desk, my drawing surface, the first foundation for the projects that would later become my career. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. College was where I learned I wasn't just good at something, I was exceptional. Interior design felt instinctive, like I could see the skeletons of spaces and rearrange them in my mind until everything made sense. I worked restlessly, hungrily, while Madison floated through life being praised for existing. After graduation, I built a small design business from nothing. For years, I took the jobs other designers rolled their eyes at: tiny studio apartments, cramped offices, rentals in desperate need of resuscitation. I stayed up late, obsessed over details, and slowly my work started to mean something to people who weren't related to me. Clients began requesting me by name. Projects got bigger, budgets got larger, my life became my own. By the time I turned 30, I finally did something for myself that no one else in my family could overshadow. I bought oceanfront land in the Hamptons and designed a villa from the ground up. 2 years of construction, adjustments, sketches, and site visits went into that home. And through it all, in the construction trailer, covered in blueprints and coffee stains, sat my old crooked table. That uneven little thing had become the silent witness to every success I'd carved out, despite the family who said I was too dramatic or too sensitive whenever I tried to talk about the way they treated me. A few months before the house was done, an HGTV producer named Sarah reached out. She wanted to film the villa for a new design segment, show it off, highlight the architectural lines, capture the final reveal. I agreed, partly because it was good for business, and partly because a part of me, buried deep and bruised, imagined my parents watching it and finally seeing me. But old wounds don't heal just because you build a house with perfect symmetry. 2 days before the housewarming party I had been planning for months, the one where I hoped my family would notice what I had built, what I had become, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. We're not coming to your housewarming. Your sister is moving into a rental apartment. We have to help her. No apology, no explanation, no we're proud of you. Just that. I read the text 3 times. I wasn't angry. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel surprised. I felt awake. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents exactly as they were, people who would never show up for me no matter how big, beautiful, or successful the things I built became. I put my phone in a drawer, turned off the ringer, and looked at the long dining table I had designed for 16 guests. A table where everyone would be treated equally because I had known my entire life what it felt like not to be. Then I sat down with my notebook and started a new list, not of the people I wanted to come, but the people who had been forgotten in my family for far too long. 12 names, 12 stories, 12 people who deserved to finally sit at a table where they belonged. And for the first time in 30 years, I didn't care if my parents showed up at all. The morning after I sent out the invitations, the air in the Hamptons felt different, lighter, almost expectant. It was early, the kind of early where the ocean is still gray and the sky is more promise than daylight. I stood at the villa's glass wall with a mug of coffee in my hand, staring at the waves rolling in, steady and assured. It grounded me, reminded me I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval anymore. I was building something new, something I didn't have to beg anyone to show up for. My list, the 12 people my family had conveniently forgotten, sat open on the counter beside me. Jacob, Aunt Barbara, Grandma, Jennifer, cousins who disappeared into the background over the years, the ones who were always told we don't have enough seats, or maybe next time, or let's keep it small, which really meant Madison doesn't want them here. Well, Madison wasn't running this table, I was. By mid-morning, I was pacing the villa barefoot, double-checking my own design decisions like a homeowner seeing the space for the first time. The floors gleamed in soft natural light. The dining table, my centerpiece, stretched across the room, 16 identical chairs perfectly spaced around it. No head of the table, no hierarchy. Just one long line of equals. On each plate, I placed the handwritten card, "You belong here." The caterers arrived shortly after noon. I chose the best company I'd ever worked with, one that treated food like an art form, not an obligation. They brought in boxes of appetizers, desserts, fresh herbs, seafood, sauces simmering in sealed containers. The kitchen filled with warm scents, lemon zest, rosemary, butter, garlic, roasted vegetables. It smelled like the kind of gathering I'd always wanted to experience as a kid. One where everyone was welcome, not just me if Madison was in a good mood. "You expecting a formal crowd?" the head chef asked lightly as he unpacked trays. "Not formal," I said. "Just people who've earned a place at the table." He looked at the cards I'd written and smiled. "Feels like it's going to be a special night." "I hope so," I murmured. Once they left to prep off-site, I spent the afternoon obsessing over details, smoothing seat cushions, adjusting the angle of the candles, polishing glasses that were already spotless. Then the HGTV crew arrived, early. Bright lights spilled across the entryway as the team walked in, transforming my villa into a film set. Sarah, the producer, waved at me from behind a camera. "We'd love to capture you doing some finishing touches," she said. "Just natural moments. Keep doing what you're doing." Natural. Nothing about building a life you were never invited into felt natural. Still, I agreed. They followed me from room to room as I tightened a loose screw, brushed a wrinkle from a cushion, dusted the stone counters. They filmed the way I walked through the space, checking the symmetry of every line, the flow of every room, the heart of my design philosophy. "What made you build this house?" Sarah asked as she watched me adjust a table runner. I didn't think about my answer. It came out in one exhale. I wanted to build a space where everyone has a seat at the same table, no one more important than anyone else. She blinked, absorbing the weight of that. "That's a beautiful concept. Why that idea specifically?" I paused, fingers brushing the smooth edge of the dining table I had sketched, revised, and obsessed over for years. "Because growing up," I said softly, "there was always a main table, and I was never at it." Sarah didn't say anything, just nodded. Cameras rolled. They filmed until midnight. Shots of the villa alone in the moonlight, wide angles of the table, close-ups of the cards. When they finally packed up, I stood in the silence they left behind and felt something stir in me. Tomorrow this house wouldn't be empty. For once, people would be here who wanted to be here. The next evening, right as the sun began to dip, the first car pulled into the driveway. I could see the silhouettes from the dining room. Smaller shapes. Children first. Jennifer's kids climbed out fast, shouting and pointing at the house like it was a castle. Jennifer followed slowly, nervous, clutching a paper bag like she wasn't sure she belonged in a place like this. Then Aunt Barbara's car. Older model. Faded paint. She stepped out with a pie wrapped carefully in a towel. The sight of her carrying something she'd made, with pride, hit me unexpectedly hard. More guests arrived. Cousins. Grandma in a floral dress, looking around as though she was afraid someone would tell her she was in the wrong place. An uncle who'd always been relegated to the kids' table, despite being in his 60s. When the last guest arrived, the house felt alive. Voices echoing, footsteps on the tile, laughter from the hallway. I gave a full tour. The kitchen, the living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows, the upstairs bedrooms glowing with sunset views. They touched everything. Walls, counters, fixtures, as if they couldn't believe they were allowed in this kind of home. Beautiful, Grandma kept whispering. Just beautiful. Finally, I led them into the dining room. 16 seats, 16 identical settings, 16 cards that said the same thing. For a long moment, no one sat. They just stood there, taking it in. Then Jacob whispered, almost to himself, "No main table." I nodded. "There isn't one here." People began to sit, slowly, reverently, reading their cards. Some smiled, some swallowed hard. Aunt Barbara wiped her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. The food came, plated beautifully, served to them like they mattered. Jennifer's kids ate without being shushed. Grandma told a long story about her childhood, and nobody cut her off. Jacob laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. As I looked around the table, something inside me clicked into place. This was what a family gathering was supposed to feel like. Warm, equal, real. Not the kind where you tiptoe around someone else's comfort to make sure the favorite child has enough space to shine. We ate until the candles burned low, talked until voices softened. When the last dessert plates were cleared, no one rushed to leave. They lingered, holding on to the feeling. When they finally did go, the house didn't feel empty, not the way it used to. It felt full of something I had been missing my entire life. A sense of belonging. A sense of choice. A sense of control over who got to sit at my table. And as the last tail lights disappeared down the long driveway, my phone buzzed in the drawer across the room. I didn't need to check it to know who it was. My old family had finally noticed the new one. The morning after the dinner, the house was still and quiet in a way that felt sacred. Sunlight filtered through the glass walls, brushing over empty plates, scattered glasses, and the faint imprint of people who had finally been given a seat at a table where they mattered. For once, my home wasn't just beautiful, it felt lived in. Warm, claimed. I stretched, savoring the calm. Then I opened my phone. 37 missed calls, all from the same 3 names. Mom, Dad, Madison. Back-to-back calls, 1-minute intervals, voicemail after voicemail. Followed by a flood of messages. "We saw the show. Why didn't you tell us? Everyone is talking about it. You embarrassed us. Call me back now." I stared at the screen, the familiar tightness creeping into my chest. Not fear, not guilt, just muscle memory from a lifetime of being scolded for wanting to be seen. Then I turned the phone face down and walked away. People often think anger is loud, but there's a different version, a quiet one, a final one. That was the version living inside me now. Around noon, Grandma knocked on my door. She never called first. She never needed to. "Tea?" I asked. "Only if you make it the way I like," she teased, stepping inside. "Too sweet and too hot." We carried our mugs to the living room. She sat carefully, holding hers with both hands, looking around with a mixture of pride and something heavier, something protective. "Your parents are telling everyone you didn't invite them," she said after a long sip. "They're going around saying you excluded them intentionally." I let out a soft laugh. "I invited them. They chose Madison. Again." Grandma nodded slowly. "I know. And anyone who matters knows. But they're working themselves up about the episode." "They can be upset," I said. "I didn't lie." Before she could respond, my phone began to ring again. "Mom." I sighed. Grandma gave me a look. "Put it on speaker," I answered. "Hello?" Mom's voice came through the line, soft and brittle. Fake soft, the kind she used when she wanted to manipulate the tone before the conversation even started. "Everly, sweetheart, we watched the episode. There's been a huge misunderstanding." I said nothing, just let the silence settle. "The show made it look like we rejected you," she continued. "But that's not true at all. Madison needed help moving. You understand that, don't you?" Still, I didn't speak. And you've always been very private, she added quickly. We didn't think you'd want to make a big show of your housewarming. We thought you'd be uncomfortable. I leaned back against the couch. I saved your message, I said quietly. The one where you said you weren't coming. I can show it to anyone who's interested. The sweetness vanished instantly. You're exaggerating, she snapped. We've always supported you. You're blowing this out of proportion. And then, for the first time in my life, Grandma interrupted her daughter. Stop it, Linda, she said sharply. Just stop. Silence. You have been doing this since Rowan was a child, Grandma continued, turning away from her, choosing Madison every single time, every holiday, every birthday, every opportunity to make things fair. That's not true, Mom's voice cracked. It is true, Grandma said softly, and now the entire town has seen it. The line went dead. Mom hung up. Grandma set her cup down gently and looked at me with the kind of pride that doesn't need applause. You did everything right, she said, and they're not used to seeing consequences. For a moment, I felt like a kid again, sitting on the garage floor, sanding wood, the only person who believed in me being the woman sitting across from me now. I thought maybe that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, while I was sketching new design plans in my office, I heard tires crunching on the driveway. Multiple car doors slammed. I looked through the window and saw them. Mom, Dad, Madison. The triad of denial. They walked slowly toward the house, staring at it as if they were touring a museum built out of their own regrets. Madison was the first to speak, loud enough for me to hear through the closed door. I've always dreamed of a house like this. Of course she had. I opened the door before they could knock. What do you need? I asked. Mom smiled that rehearsed, brittle smile she used on church friends and Facebook photos. Honey, we need to talk. We want to explain everything. Work this out. Dad stepped forward, chin up. You should throw another housewarming party. For us. Then post it on social media so people see we're reconciled. It would help our reputation. I actually laughed. You turned down my housewarming to help Madison move into a rental, and now you want me to throw a second one for you? You're being dramatic, Madison chimed in, leaning to peer inside the house. I was thinking I could move in here for a while, just until I find a better place. Something inside me snapped. Not anger, but the kind of clarity you only get when you've finally stopped bargaining for crumbs. I took out my phone. If you're not off my property in 1 minute, I'm calling the police. Dad's jaw dropped. You wouldn't dare. I pressed 9. Madison shrieked. Oh my God, you're calling the cops on your own family? 1, I continued, finger hovering. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. Let's go. She's being unreasonable. They stalked back to the car, Madison muttering. Dad glaring at me like I'd committed a crime instead of drawing a boundary 30 years overdue. At the car, Dad turned, voice tight with fury. You'll regret this, Rowan. You can't just cut us off. Watch me, I said, and shut the door. Their engine revved, gravel sprayed, they left. I stood there for a long moment, the silence returning like a blessing I hadn't known I craved. Later, I called Jennifer. She nearly choked laughing. They wanted you to throw them a party, she said, and Madison wanted to move in? Apparently, my success is now a community resource, I replied dryly. Are you okay, though? Really okay? I looked around the villa, my walls, my windows. It's my sanctuary. I am, I said. For the first time in my life, I really am. And I was. In the weeks that followed the driveway showdown, the silence from my parents and Madison settled over my life like a soft blanket, not heavy, not suffocating, just quiet, clean. I didn't realize how much noise they had taken up in my head until they were gone from it, and for the first time, the stillness felt peaceful, not empty. My villa became a gathering place without me ever planning it that way. People came because they wanted to. Not because they were obligated, not because appearances demanded it, not because they needed a picture for social media. They came because this house, for reasons I hadn't fully understood at first, made them feel welcome in a way they hadn't experienced anywhere else. Every few weeks, I'd send a simple message, dinner at my place Saturday, come hungry, and every time the answer was the same, we'll be there. Jacob would arrive early with his teenage daughter, who carried a sketchbook everywhere and always asked me questions about architecture and structure and why certain lines made a room feel balanced. She reminded me so much of myself at that age, eager, thoughtful, aching to create. I started setting up a little workspace for her in my office. She didn't know it yet, but she was going to be brilliant. Jennifer would show up with her kids, who treated the villa like their second home. They knew where the beach towels were kept, which bathroom was theirs, and how to unlock the side gate to get to the outdoor shower. Watching them felt like watching a childhood I didn't get to have. Comfortable, easy, unafraid. Aunt Barbara baked now, really baked. Not just pies wrapped in towels like she'd brought to the first dinner, but full dishes she was proud to present. She told me no one had ever wanted her cooking at family gatherings. Here, she always left with empty plates and new recipe requests. Grandma came over more than anyone. Sometimes she stayed for dinner, sometimes for coffee, sometimes overnight. She'd sit on the terrace with the ocean glowing gold behind her and tell me stories she said she'd stopped telling long ago, because no one ever listened. I listened. Every word. Bit by bit, without any grand declarations, these people who had always been pushed to the sidelines, became my real family. My business exploded after the HGTV episode aired. Clients from all over the state reached out, some even from out of state. I hired 2 assistants to manage the workload. We opened a small studio office in town, but I still did my real work at home, at the old uneven table from the garage, the one that had been with me longer than anyone else. One night, I was sketching ideas for a commercial project when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" A hesitant voice. "Rowan?" My stomach tightened. "Madison, what do you want?" A shaky breath. I just wanted to talk. We haven't spoken in months. I wanted to check on you." I didn't respond. I waited. "I know things got blown out of proportion," she said, "but we're family. We should be able to move past this." "You tried to move into my house," I said flatly. I was upset. "After you moved into a rental and Mom and Dad ditched my housewarming for you." Silence. "Do you not see how that looks?" I asked. A long pause. "I was overwhelmed," she whispered. "I didn't mean any of it." "Yes," I said quietly, "you did." Another silence, this one deeper. "So that's it?" she asked in a small voice. "You're just done with us?" "I'm done being treated like I don't matter," I said. "If you can't understand why, that's not my problem anymore." I hung up before she could say anything else and blocked the number. My hand didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt nothing but relief, the kind that comes when you close a door that should have been closed years ago. 2 weeks later, a handwritten letter from her arrived. Apologies, deflections, explanations, and at the center of it all, Mom and Dad are struggling with their reputation now. People stopped inviting them places. It's been hard. I fed the letter into the shredder. I didn't owe them access. I didn't owe them forgiveness. I didn't owe them anything. And God, it felt freeing. Months passed. The villa grew into a breathing thing, alive with laughter, footsteps, cheerful chaos. Thanksgiving approached, and without planning it, I ended up hosting. 23 people came. We pushed tables together. Kids sat with adults. No one was relegated to a kitchen or scolded for talking too much. Grandma stood up and said grace. Her voice trembled as she thanked God for second chances and for tables big enough to fit everyone. When she finished, Aunt Barbara cried. Jacob raised his glass. "This," he said, looking around the room, "is what family is supposed to feel like." My phone buzzed during dessert. I glanced at it. "Mom," a new message. I deleted it without opening it. After everyone left and the house settled into its nighttime hum, I walked through each room, turning off lights. The dining room still held the warmth of gathering. Crumbs, empty plates, chairs pushed in at perfect angles. The living room had stray toys under the sofa. The terrace held empty wine glasses glinting in moonlight. Then I stopped at my office. The old table, the one I built at 12 with wobbly legs and uneven edges, sat there, paint-smudged and imperfect, still standing, still supporting the work I loved. I placed my hand on it, feeling the grain under my palm. That table had been my beginning. This villa was the life I built from it, and the people who filled it now, the ones who showed up, they were the family I chose, not the one I was assigned. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark ocean, the waves steady and timeless. I was 30 years old. I had a successful business, a home that felt like a heartbeat, a community that lifted me. And for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who saw me, not as a backup singer to Madison's spotlight, not as an afterthought, not as someone to lean on only in emergencies, but as someone worth showing up for. People may say blood is thicker than water. Maybe for them it is. For me, family is the people who pull up a chair without being asked, the ones who stay, the ones who choose you back. And I had never been happier.